Vietnam. TVC News, Abuja.
Member of the House of Representatives, Ogene Egoh, joins me from our Abuja studio for more on this. Good to have you join us on TVC News at 7. We can see the efforts of lawmakers to meet up with the January-December budget cycle. But how do we avoid getting the budget extending to February?
Well, you know, for a long time, the historical budget cycle of January to December had been altered. And it was this government that tried to correct it. But as we can see, needs and necessity made it impossible to do the January to December budget. But I'm sure that if the implementation is done the way the president is saying, we may be close to coming back to that budget cycle of January to December.
All right. And what exactly is your expectation about the budget in terms of economic development?
First of all, let me commend the National Assembly, the House of Rep and the Senate for the prompt manner they handled the budget by approving it as quickly as possible. It's part of from the fact that the president brought an additional variation. This was approved immediately. The second thing is that this is one of the greatest budgets we've had in over 10 years. You will recall that when this president came into power, he mentioned that 97% of Nigerian income was being used to service debt. In other words, Nigeria was not existing. In other words, nothing was being done in the country. And that is why you see that all roads are bad and development was not going on. But under this budget, you can see that less than debt servicing is less than 20%, as again 97%. Debt servicing is just about 14 billion under this budget. So this government have done very well by bringing debt servicing from 97% of budget to less than about 20% of the budget. That is the first thing. The second thing is that in the last 8 years, capital projects have never drawn more than 20% of the budget. But right now, 23 trillion is allocated for capital projects. And that is over 40% of the budget. So when you look at it, this is a great budget. Again, the president has shown that he understands the suffering of the common man. Each time the president says, oh, I understand the suffering of the common man, we are doing something to correct it. A lot of people think that it's politics. For instance, the Ministry of Agriculture, Food, was allocated about 1.9 trillion, 1.5 trillion, which is a hefty part of the budget. Another area that had a good allocation is education, 1.5 trillion. All these are the things that concern the common man. Power also got 1.3 trillion. And works probably did a bit better by about 2 trillion, while defense also passed the 1 trillion mark. These are the most important aspects of this economy right now. The common man is hungry. President have done a good allocation to agriculture. And they are also reviving the Bank of Agriculture. A hefty amount have been allocated to it. So farmers can now approach the bank all over the country. I can see a bumper harvest in the next 12 months because there's fund for it.
All right, then. Let's talk about the increase. Remember, lawmakers increased this from about 54.2 to 54.9 trillion naira. What could have been the reason for the increase? Because, some would have expected that, considering the economy, this would probably have been cut down.
Well, the increase is necessitated by increased revenue. Before this President Tinubu came in, oil revenue was just about 800 barrels per day. But since came in, it has risen to about 1.4 billion barrels and even more than that per day. So more income is coming from agriculture. Don't also forget that the reforms of Mr. President on taxation also played a major role. All areas of taxation by far exceeded the budget, whereas in the past, tax was bringing in just about 3 300 billion. Today, is bringing in trillions, even cost of the same thing. So there's enhanced revenue that's coming up because of proper management of the nation's resources. I'm very certain that by the time the president fully implements this budget, Nigeria will be far better. Don't also forget that right now inflation is about 35%, and everybody is crying. But this budget intends to bring inflation down to about 50%. So it's all applause for President Tinubu. This is a great budget that he has presented.
All right, and finally, what's your advice to the executive arm of government to ensure we are able to achieve, if possible, 100% budget performance?
Well, 100% budget performance is hardly possible. In the past, Nigeria does not get more than 40% budget performance. But this budget of Mr. President, the way it's presented, sources of income all listed, I'm sure that if anything, we'll get up to 90% budget performance. And if we do that, it would have been one of the greatest budgets that we have presented in more than 20 years of the life of Nigeria.
All right,
to me, this is one very great budget that Mr. President has presented.
All right.
And that is why I commended the House of Rep and Senate for immediate approval or quick approval of this budget.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your submission. Former member of the House of Reps, Ogene Egoh, thank you very much for your time on TVC News at 7.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.